Fantastic. Can I have everybody pay attention up front for a second? Put your phones away for me. This is gonna help you guys for this project. All right, so this is the dragon eye that I did as my sample. Oh, here we go again. Okay. So I said to add pen and ink techniques. So cross-hatching, hatching, stippling. You guys could pick. So the way I did it, I kind of changed mine up a little bit, but most of it's cross-hatching. I have a little bit of hatching up here. So you want every part of the dragon eye to have some sort of texture. Doesn't necessarily, it could be like, you can do different types of textures too. Like the cross-hatching and hatching is more for the value. There's another kind that I want to show you. I'm just trying to decide what part to put it on so it doesn't look stupid. Let's see. I'll do it on one of the spikes here. This one's cool too, and you guys can use different shapes to do this as well. So I think it's called scumbling, I'm pretty sure. So what it is you're just going in circles and you're overlapping the circles to create that dark value. So I picked the side of the spike to do it, and I'm just going, literally making curlicues. And then to get lighter, you guys have to make them the circles a little bit bigger and blend them in. Okay, and it actually looks really cool, and that's something else you guys can do, okay? Stippling also comes out pretty awesome, especially for like the rounded scales. For, let's see, this one, I used curved lines, and I gradually started to space them out as I got to the center. So I'm gonna overlap them where they're touching, and then gradually space them out. And then I'm gonna go to this side and go dark again, and then have it meet halfway. And that's something you guys could do for hatching. The cross hatching, I made mine look kind of like three-dimensional. So this should be like the top of it, and that should be the front. It's a little upside down for you. But I also did spikes here on the top, and I just hatched one side so that it's dark on one side, light on the other. In the eye, it's really cool. You guys can do some really fun things in the iris if you look up. You could do veins. I've seen if you do that. You could do stippling. You can do some cool looking hatching lines. I just used stippling, and I did it in lines, and I overlapped my dots here and just made like streaks and had them closer together and then gradually get farther apart. And it's easy to hold the thin Sharpie straight up and you get a nicer dot, and it's a little bit quicker. I'm gonna keep doing that in all different rows. And there's all these things you guys can do. So for the cross hatching, I went from one direction and I went this way from the sides. Then I went the other way. Then I went and kind of curved it slightly because the scale is slightly curved. And I went a little bit darker, and then I'm gonna space it out. And I do the same thing on the top. I can go one direction. And then switch it up in this direction. And that kind of gives it a texture too. Now I kind of made, almost look like leaves, but I guess they could be feathers. I just drew a line straight through, and my plan for that was just to hatch going this direction. And I could get darker on this side. And then I could do the same thing on that side. So I'm just trying to like use different types of textures in each of the scales to make it look more interesting. You can do a little bit of hatching right underneath the top row of your scale, because technically, like with the eye, your eyelid's kind of covering most of your eyeball. So your eyelashes kind of cast a shadow on your eye. So if you wanted to make it look more realistic, I would say you can use the black color pencil to create the shadow, but then it would mix with the colors that you're going to do within your pupil, which are the warm colors. So then it wouldn't really look that good. You could do it later though, once it dries, but if you wanted to do pen and do like a little shadow, you could do light hatching right on top. And then I'll show you how to do like the color pencil shadow really lightly once you're finished. And then you can leave a highlight there. So I still have a lot of work to do on this. You can also vary the thicknesses of your Sharpie. If you have like the regular fine one, you can outline some areas with that, like I did here on some of these front scales. And then some of them I just have thin lines outlining them. So you can play with the thickness. And I made the thicker lines around the eyeball here, and then use a finer tip for the detail inside. So you guys can play with the thickness of lines. That makes it look a lot more interesting if you vary the thicknesses. It doesn't just look like all thin. It makes some areas pop out and others not. So it really does I really like it when you vary lines like that, the thicknesses. Now, this is the part where I talked to you guys about warm colors and cool colors. Warm colors are the reds, oranges, yellows. You could do even a pink. Any variation in between, like a red-orange. Some people have red-orange color pencils, or yellow-orange. So I told you to either pick the warm in the eyeball, or you could do the warm in the scales and then cool in the eyeball. Okay? I'll let you guys pick what combination you want to do. Anytime you have a dark area of your pen, okay, that's where you want to press a little harder. So in mine, what I did was right where I had the darker shadow of my stippling, I added a little bit of red. Then I lighten my pressure. Then I'm adding a little bit of orange. And then I'm gonna overlap it, with the yellow. And I was gonna continue that. There's all different ways you guys can go about it. There's also 2 different ways to show value. So for these scales, I used a dark blue. Actually, it kind of looks violet up here, but it was a dark blue, and I used that to show the shadows, and then I blended it with a lighter blue. So that you could do it that way, or you can just press hard to light with one color pencil. Does that make sense to you guys? By pressing down harder, you can create light and dark with one, or you can use a darker color and a lighter color in the middle to blend, to create dark and light. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. So that's your option 2. I like it because then you can blend. Like I could do a light blue to violet in some of these as well. You can use a green. You just have to be careful that you don't have any of the warm colors where the cool colors are supposed to go. So I'll show you. And then you guys are going to be using watercolor pencils, which are a little bit pretty much the same, but how you're going to apply water is going to be different. So I'm pressing a little bit harder, and then I'm going to fan it out a little bit. So you want to do like a mid pressure towards the center where you can take the light blue and put that where the highlight is. So those of you who use the watercolor, like you guys, what you're going to have to do is anytime you want a darker value, you press harder, which means there's going to be more pigment on the paper. So it is going to be darker. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that either today or tomorrow. This is going to be due tomorrow because I think a lot of you guys need the time today to do the pen. And then tomorrow I'll give you guys time to do the watercolor. Unless some of you you might finish and be able to do the watercolor, okay? So you can either do warm in the inside, cool on the out, or you could flip them, but you have to keep those colors separated. So you can't have any warm in the scales if they're gonna keep them cool. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm trying to keep a color scheme for you guys, all right? All right, do you guys have any questions, or are you good? Okay. All right, you guys go ahead and get your stuff.